your head up, right with me, let's go. Keep your ears up and listen to me, let's go. Keep your head up, right with me, let's go. Keep your ears up,
Who's
listen
down
to me,
with
let's go. Keep your head
TTP? Who's down with TTP? You down with TTP? Who's down with TTP? Real quick, here comes the breakdown. What up, what up, what up? You already know, man. It's another episode of TTP. Alright. This is episode 9, yo. I know these episodes are starting to seem like they like really sporadic. I promise and not, yo, there's a lot of stuff going on, man. You got sponsors going on. My mission is getting ready to come to a close, yo. In the middle of currently creating a label, so it's a lot of stuff going on, man. I probably might do that in another video, which is kind of like a catch up type thing because I think it's long overdue. But that's not what we're here for right now, man. We're here for TTP, all right, and our title for the day is putting ointment on disappointment. And if you can't tell by the title, we're going to talk about disappointment. But before we get into all of that, before you get to turn around and hear me talk about the different aspects of disappointment and everything like that, you already know formalities first. The person who stands before you, if you do not know by now, is the MICCASTERJ. That's me, the Mike Caster. And once again, you are watching TTP or listening if you're hearing this through a podcast. All right, because I also got that too. So, as always, yo, we're going to roll into this with the definition, all right? So, the way they label disappointment as is sadness or displeasure caused by the non-fulfillment of one's hopes or expectations. So hold on to that definition right there, man. Specifically on expectations and fulfillment portion, right? Because that's going to play a lot into this whole thing as we completely break this down, okay? As we hear from the, get these information from the experts and stuff from the research I did, and really break down disappointment. All right, it's gonna come down to fulfillment and expectations. Expectations more so. So, going into it, all right. The important thing to understand when it comes to disappointment, as it was really broken down to me as I was looking at the research, is that it is an emotion that stimulates the parasympathetic nervous system. What is that? Well, that is a chemical response that triggers a result in melancholy or inertia and feeling of hopelessness, man. So it literally enables your body to feel in a state of hopelessness. Let's just call it that. All right, to just kind of be into a feeling of just like, just, I guess, the blah effect. We're going to call it the blah effect, right? Where it's just, self-doubt creeps in, regret. This is where all that stuff would turn around and start taking shape, right? So a lot of times that's usually where disappointment happens a lot, and it's usually where it goes hand in hand with those things. Disappointment is really associated a lot to failure. The two go hand in hand. Between failure, between regret, between depression, like all that starts seeping with disappointment, right? Because initially our whole reaction, our whole chemical state, our whole response from our body is just initial feeling of sadness, just a state of there's nothing more we could have done, the hopelessness, So, that being said, it's really, when it comes down to it, unlike most of the other ones where we got like types and we really start breaking it down and really stuff, disappointment is fairly simple. It's this very subtle emotional trigger, right? It's not very seldomly is it really overcomplicated. It's just really simple how disappointment turn around and affects you, or how it enters your life. Excuse me. You know, expectations. Number one, I told you we want to come back to it. Expectations. So, creating bars that are too high, what I'm saying, like standards that you can't reach, goals you can't obtain, trying to find fulfillment out of things that are not necessarily supposed to give you everything all at once. And so expectations is a big aspect to why people feel disappointment a lot. Because we either come into this in multiple ways. We either turn around and come with our expectations set all the way over here, which you already know is a setup, right? Is a setup for failure. Or we come with our expectations set way down here, which, can still be a setup for failure. So, the outcome can be, well, if you don't expect much, you get surprised by the results and you'll be much more happier with it. No, there's always the effect that what happens if you set the bar low and then the bar's even lower than the bar you set. Because, we're going to keep it real. That's also a real aspect to this, man. That can happen. Okay. So, expectations is a big aspect to that. Another one that people won't think of when it comes to disappointment, family dynamics. So breaking back into those expectations, everything's going to really pretty much hit on expectations. So family dynamics. So being taught and raised in a certain way, a certain influence, where our family is kind of like like I said, they're the ones that's instilling that nature into you. So they're the ones that's telling you, just be good enough, right? Keep it balanced. So they're the ones telling you always aim high, strive for perfection. Or they're the ones telling you to, never let yourself turn around and set your expectations too high. Always do the bare minimum, right? Underachieve. So either overachieve, underachieve, or keep it balanced, right? Now, naturally, we would all want our parents to turn around and kind of keep us into a healthy balance, right? Where we're doing enough, but we know that there's always a possibility that it might backfire and we can handle it better. But that's just not realistically how everybody's parents is teaching them, all right? It's usually one or the other extreme, okay? So that goes into the family dynamics aspect, which still ties back into expectations. Another portion is entitlement. So again, another form of expectation, right, is assuming that everything is due to you. All right, you expect it. You do this and you expect this, right? So I turn around and I do this mission, right? I turn around, I'm away from my family and everything like that. I'm doing all this stuff, this, that, and the third that the government is telling me to do, right? And of course, when I leave from here, I'm going to be like, yeah, am I going to get a reward for this? Am I going to turn around and be compensated for the time that I spent? Are you guys going to turn around and put it towards my retirement? All these things, entitlement, right? That's how some people are thinking. They're like, well, when I leave from here, this should look really good on my retirement. This should come with an award. I did all this work, So that's another aspect that can lead to disappointment, because when we don't get that, we feel cheated, we feel slighted, we feel like nobody cared, nobody gave a damn, right? So entitlement is definitely another way to turn around, set yourself up for that bridge, that quick alley-oop just to miss that dunk. And realize that you're not getting the things that you think are due to you. So it's not really a great way to go through life because, as we know, or as the saying goes, life don't know you. So it's important again to understand that expectations is going to play a lot into this, and it's just going to basically break down into other forms. Another expectation aspect would be external reality, right? So that's where we're looking at our influencers. We're looking at the people who turned around and made $1 million by doing a simple video off of YouTube. And we're like, well, I want to be able to do that too. People driving the sports cars, the model figures looking all chiseled and with the abs, and they got the perfect bodies and all that stuff like that. And we're all just projecting. And we're like, well, I want to achieve that too. I can achieve that too. But the odds are is good portion of us are either never going to come close to that, only obtain maybe 2 out of those aspects, or might get lucky, all right, or just end up losing it. We might already have it and end up losing it. So we might get there, realize this is not all it's cracked up to be, can't maintain it, and then we lose it. Disappointment. Because again, our expectation was, if I achieve this, if I reach this, then this is happiness. This is fulfillment. All right. This is going to stop me from being sad. This is going to bring me pleasure. Okay. And basically the opposite notion of what we said the definition of disappointment was. And that's just not the case. It's not realistic. Okay. So, you're projecting this reality that you don't live in through somebody else, thinking that you can obtain the same things when we're not wired that way, man. We're all unique for a reason. If it was that easy for all of us to be the same, there'd be a lot of stuff that wouldn't exist in this world. There'd be less need for a lot of stuff that exists in this world. You know what I'm saying? That's just a factor of that. Another notion is when it comes to this is developmental influences. All right, so that just plays into more specifics of that family dynamics portion. So really tying into those people who are underachieving or overachieving, right? Where you're trained constantly in your mind, consistently to work one way or the other, right? So you're either at this level, below this level, or sitting right here. And it's just been years in your life just progressing you into that mindset. All right. So that can be a setup for disappointment, because some of us might not come out of those mindsets, or it might be harder for us to stray out of those mindsets. We might not know what a life outside of those mindsets look like. Right. So that can set up for, I could easily set up for disappointment. And then, of course, everyone's favorite portion, that is just the easiest way to have disappointment, is the random nature of life. So that unhealthy mechanism we have as human beings to assume that we can dictate every aspect of our life. Don't know why we try that, but it doesn't work. All right. So random nature of life, where, a death happens in the family, we're thinking everybody's going to stay healthy. You can keep everybody together. Death happens in the family, divorce, you lose your job. A storm comes and completely tears down the dream home that you work so hard to achieve. All this stuff is disappointment, man. And we can't control those aspects, right? We can work in parameters and set up preparations for these things to kind of, hopefully maybe avoid them or make the effects or the devastations of it not hurt as much. But at the end of the day, we can't account for every single thing that's going to happen in life. It's not realistic. And that specific phrasing or sentence is what's going to really trigger a lot of the disappointment. Unrealistic expectations, right? Or trying to project or find fulfillment in other things that are not going to provide that on a constant or daily basis. All right. So those are the ways in which disappointment definitely enters your life. All right. Now, when we turn around and we come out of that portion, right, we start getting into how it affects you, right? Yo, what up, what up? It's the MICCASTERJ. That's me, the Mike Caster, teaming up with you guys at Habits 365. Turn around rocking the wear, man. Got the shirt, we got the hat. Anybody turn around and interested, they got a strong message of enforcing strong positive habits, a strong mental health mentality, all the things that I'm about, man. So you can check it out with the link that's attached to this video. And you can utilize my code and get yourself 20% off. So, one of the ways that it definitely affects you is depression. All right. Disappointment is deeply associated with depression. Because again, we talked about that sadness. So disappointment puts you into that deep in sadness, the one that doesn't go away, that lingers, right? When we talked about that, when we were grieving, or we can't simply pull past a situation and it creates a devastating effect on us that impact us differently. Disappointment causes that. So depression is definitely easy effect from disappointment, all right? So, can come from the, loss of a loved one or discouragement of failing a business, right? That can lead to that depression. That can lead to that disappointment because it perpetuated a certain level of negativity that just didn't sit right with you, right? And now it encompasses something else inside you, which is fear. Okay. Disappointment ultimately results in a fear. So, a paranoia that, man, things are just destined to go wrong. And so that's when the human habit kicks in, as us trying to find that fulfillment, or us trying to turn around and create those expectations to try and avoid that feeling, right? Nobody likes that feeling. Nobody likes a feeling of failure. Nobody likes negativity as much as the keyboard warriors will have you believe. Nobody likes that feeling. So loss is not something that comes naturally to us as human beings, because we always want to try and win. We always want to succeed. We always want to be successful. That's what we're taught in life. That's the common push, right, in society nowadays. Succeed, win at all costs and everything, right? Nobody ever wants to admit defeat. Failure is unattractive. All this, that, and the third, right? And you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. All right. You're creating a false reality in your mind that you can avoid what is inevitable in life, and that is the fact that at some point things that you plan will not go the way you want it to. And again, that leads you to a depression because your mind just cannot push past it. It's triggering. All right, it creates a sadness, that fulfillment, that pleasure, joy, whatever. The expectation you set, it's the fact that you didn't get it has now sat a certain level of grief in you that you can't overcome. All right. Apathy is also another way that it affects you. Right. So that's a condition in which someone becomes indifferent or passive to life. All right. So it starts making you that's where that hopelessness comes from. Feeling helpless because you're disappointed about a situation that you believe you can't change, or, you start lacking energy. You start having bad relationships. You become really intolerant, just all types of stuff. You give up. All right. Even just going as far as to resigning to an illness, or being frustrated with life. All right. So those people who are constantly Debbie Downers, that's your people in that apathy level, man. They skipped the depression, went straight to apathy. They just gave up. All right, because it's disappointing every day. It's just that they don't feel it's worth trying. Okay, and that's not a good place to go. So, and that's usually from a level of constant disappointment. It's from always setting too many bars, too many unrealistic expectations that you just can't fulfill. So you got to be more realistic with the goals and stuff that you set, man. And that's for everybody. It's not just me telling you that. It's me telling myself that. We got to be more realistic about the stuff that we set ourselves to do. Denial is also another. It looks like we're about to go to the stages of grief with the way this is going. But denial is also another characteristic, right? So, outwardly pretending that a disappointing situation does not exist, right? So, people going through multiple disappointments will eventually get to this point where they want to overlook the issue, right? Or they want to hope situations will change or things will go away, man. Or they're they believe that their ambitions and their goals aren't really worth pursuing, right? So they just kind of look for excuses. They lose that that desire to really be open to different things, or be open to experience, and they try to pursue the easiest route or the most simple route that will lead to the least amount of disappointment, or at least allow them to avoid it, or give them another avenue in which they don't have to turn around and really deal with it. All right. So they're just constantly just putting off. And again, that's a unhealthy way to go about life, man. It's a quick way to turn around and also introduce stress, right? Because you constantly deny, you never admitting the problem, you never turn around and coming face to face with the situation. You're just internalizing. I remember we talked about with that Trust the Plus, that star, man, that star of Bethlehem. If you're internalizing, you're crushing that light within you, man, and it's just it starts making everything else crumble after that, right? Another one is anger. So, reaction to a situation that or specifically people. Anger usually comes when you're disappointed with people. That's not to say you can't get angry from the disappointment of the expectations that you set or the goals you set, but what comes much more natural than getting angry at ourselves? Getting angry at others. So finding somebody else to blame, right? Emotional backlash or behavioral backlash to that disappointment, right? So just kind of going into an outburst of the day-to-day experiences with disappointment that you're feeling. Kind of getting into that whole, the world is out to get me. That's a good way to describe it. That world is out to get me type view. That's when you're in that anger characterization, right? You're just enraged. There's a resentment, right? That can sometimes borderline on violence. So, but it definitely starts creating feelings of negativity, depression, helplessness towards situations, right? So, although you're angry, you're making yourself even more susceptible to all that sadness we talked about in the beginning that leads to that depression, right? Because now you're just you instead of looking for that silver lining or the bright side, you're just deeply engulfed in the grief, right? And now you're reacting to it instead of trying to find solutions or trying to create another avenue. Now you're just kind of like sitting in that moment and letting it fester and not letting it go. All right. And then one of them we already talked about. So another characteristic is fear, right? So fear towards the situation happening. So just already predominantly thinking that, well, if I was disappointed this time, again, who's to say I won't be disappointed again, right? So, feel from results, from undergoing those experiences, or from people disappointing you in the past, reliving that disappointment. So these are things that can be, these are things that can encompass that fear, that go hand in hand after kind of more so experiencing disappointment. And again, and even the experts will turn around and tell you it's a natural reaction. It's not a good feeling. So people will do anything to avoid it. So naturally, especially if you experience disappointment that was really devastating, naturally you'd want to try and avoid it, right? So it's only logical that fear, which is a mechanism to turn around and help you avoid dangerous situations or things that you presume to be a threat, right? It's only natural that would turn around and take over. And sometimes it can do it in a very unhealthy way. It can have like a psychological and emotional turmoil on yourself, right? Your well-being. So create a really numbing effect on you, so to speak. And then, of course, one of the other things that it says is people who are disappointed are also at greater risk of physical or emotional difficulties. Sometimes both. Such individuals appear to have a greater frequency of headaches, gastrointestinal difficulties, moist palms, overperspiration, than those scoring low on this scale. For some, being very disappointed for prolonged periods of time can lead to chronic stress, which we talked about way earlier when we first touched on stress. One of the first things that we went over when I first started this, right? So remember, chronic stress is that high level. It's the highest level of stress, where it's just deeply heart failure, body problems. You're literally kind of putting yourself into this constant state where you're on high alert all the time, right? So disappointment can do that, create that level of paranoia, create that level of stress, that level of fear, the level of sadness, the level of depression that is just overall unhealthy for us emotionally, physically. It just kind of puts our body into a whole state of just, fatigue, frustration, anger, all types of things that can create tension in your body, create tension in the muscle, create, tension in your mind. Blockage, stoppage can kind of create, again, just, like I said, migraines, or, just physical inability, right? Especially when you're in that the apathy state, when you're just no longer willing to try. So it's kind of crazy because you can go from just something so simple as you wanted to go to the store, turn around and buy a Reese's Piece, and they ran out. And then you got disappointed, and you can go from something as simple as being disappointed over a candy bar to winding up in the hospital. So, needless to say, as it's always stressed inside this, this show, as we talk about, is that, it's important to not get too wrapped up into these things, man. I know it's easier said than done, but we got to self-check ourselves because, man, it's just like the tunnel that you just kind of put yourself into, or just like the pit that you start digging when you really go too far deep into these things. Because it's not to say you can't feel it. You're going to feel it. But when you go too far deep into these things, it's just not worth it, man. It's really not. Which is why we're going to segue to how to deal with it, right? Because that's important. So it goes without saying, how to deal with it is going to be probably the most simple aspect to this video, right? I got something so profound for you, right? You ready? It's 3 ways, right? at least from what I was reading. I kept reading different types of stuff, but the 3 ways they mainly turn around and emphasize on is shift your expectations. It even goes to say expectations play a central role in disappointment, as we talked about, right? And the resulting stress. So evaluate what you expect from family and coworkers, and then even going as far as to say in your everyday life, right? And then check to see if those expectations are fair and reasonable. If not, change your expectations. Your plus. Again, we talked about those things that increase your spirit. If they're not doing that for you, change them, right? Those people that you have, those goals that you have on your anchor, right? The one that points downward. If they're not goals you can obtain, change them. Above all, they need to be people who are constant, who kind of keep you accountable, but also kind of make sure that you don't get too far into yourself, right? And kind of keep you afloat, keep your mental stable, right? If they're not doing that, they shouldn't be in your above all. You see what I'm saying? It all ties back together. I promise there's a point to this whole thing, yo. I'm not just pulling this out of my butt. So, shift your expectations, right? Another one is, and you would think it'd be the same thing, but they're 2 different things. Redirect your thinking. So sometimes it's not even just really a matter of expectations, right? It's just a matter of thinking. So, dwelling on your disappointments, dwelling on what didn't work, right? Dwelling on people that did not change or situations that did not change, that can preoccupy your thought, right? It's something that they turn around to stress over here. So sometimes we can get so preoccupied with thinking about a situation that does not meet our needs that we create unnecessary stress. Because again, we're trying to find that fulfillment, right? We're trying to find that pleasure. We're trying to fill that hole, that void, thinking that we can redo it. We can't redo it. Once you miss something, you missed it. You move on, right? You find another turn. You turn around, cope with that, and you find another way to move forward. All right. You can't go back and then redo it. It already happened. The moment's already passed. When you keep trying to chase that, you get into this chase, this level, this high that you can't reach, man. Yeah, so it's definitely redirect your thinking, keep your mental stable, right? Thinking does not mean you're going to change a negative situation, but it will change how you feel about it. And that's what the thinking portion is. Changing the way how we feel about it. So instead of immediately just going into anger, immediately going into denial, immediately going into depression or sadness or anything like that, just kind of like going, all right, well, this didn't work. So here's what we could do instead of, right? Going back to the simple part, the Reese's. Well, I didn't have my Reese's, but, what else do I like other than Reese's? Oh, I like Skittles. Well, I wasn't planning on getting Skittles, but hey, they got Skittles. So I'm going to turn around and take the Skittles. Boom. Took my disappointment and found another way to turn around and move forward with it and press on, right? I know it's a very simple example, but it really is that simple, man. It's you can tell with the way my notes and stuff is going with the explanations and the details. It really is that simple. It's not really it's not like the other ones where it's really overcomplicated. We make disappointment overcomplicated, but disappointment in itself is not overcomplicated. In fact, disappointment is actually supposed to be a much more healthier thing. So it's how we actually turn around and learn. It's how we navigate through life. It's how we figure out how to do something better. So disappointment is not even actually really supposed to be a bad thing. It's actually supposed to be part of the process that actually enables your understanding of how to do things better. It's supposed to enable us to change, to progress. So it's not even supposed to be bad. Again, that's my other thing when I'm doing this stuff, is to really kind of change your viewpoint on how how we portray these words, how society makes these things to be panned out, right? How we create these weird mechanisms for these words and give all these words all this power, this is why it leads us to all this mental stress, emotional stress, physical ailments and stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because we give these words, we give these moments, we give these triggers way too much power. Okay. And then of course, the last way is communicate more effectively. So, disappointment can be reduced or eliminated by better communication. What do you mean? Listen more to what others are saying, right? When necessary. Restate what you hear. Most stress is caused by not understanding what a person is saying or meaning, or, by restating what was said, you reduce the problem at the very beginning. So sometimes you can avoid your own disappointment by just kind of understanding more about the situation. So they mostly described it in terms of people, but I take it a step forward, right? You can perceive situations ahead of time to turn around and initially not create a situation of disappointment. Again, going back to the store, right? If you know that you're heading to the store and the store is usually busy a lot and a lot of people go in and out of the store, and you kind of got to the store late expecting to turn around and grab your favorite candy, well, odds are your favorite candy wasn't going to be there. You already know you got to the store late. You already know how many people go in and out of it. You already know it's towards the end of the day. Odds are it's not there. See what I'm saying? So instead of going to that store, probably try a different store, right? It's communicating to yourself effectively. It's kind of, again, taking the alternate route. As far as people, if this one person is, if this one person has a habit of not doing this at a specific time, you can turn around and communicate to them or restate what it is that you want to do. Maybe they didn't understand. Maybe there's another way that you can kind of work this out where that person and yourself can both come and meet each other in the middle. See what I'm saying? Whether it's relationships, whether it's your best friend, whether it's a coworker, whether you're trying to get somebody to turn around and do a job, communicate more effectively. See what I'm saying? Understand the situation a little bit more. And a lot of times you can avoid disappointment a lot. And when I say avoid, I mean like a fear, enabling a fear or anything like that. I mean a healthy avoidance. Common sense is what this is basically talking about. Let's call it what it is. Common sense. Some basic common sense can help you avoid disappointment a lot. Especially going back to expectations. Common sense about your expectations can help you avoid disappointment a lot. I'm going to be a millionaire like this person in the next 2 months. Really? You're just going to turn around and leave your Walmart job and immediately become a millionaire in the next 2 months without any kind of planning or any understanding of how you're going to do that. Good luck. Because even people who turn around and go viral and go ahead had a plan of action before they even remotely made that video that set them and changed their lives. So, again, common sense, man. And then, of course, finally, man, because we can't go nowhere without the word. Because, I'm a Christian, man. I'm a spiritual person, man. So I'm going to give you, there got to be some level of God inside all of this. Otherwise, what's the point? At the end of the day, I still see all of you as brothers and sisters in Christ, man. And, if I'm going to speak on stuff and I'm going to talk about stuff, especially things as deep as this, I want to make sure that I pull it from sources that can really help, especially the source. So here's a quote from the Bible, right? But blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in the year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. What is that? What does that mean? By the way, it was Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 7 through 8. Needless to say, it just means that, trust in the Lord, and always understand that every situation has a silver lining. That is not unrealistic optimism or anything like that. Every situation has a silver lining. The Bible tells you over and over again, God has a way of making things that seem bad work towards your greater good. So if you truly believe that, and you trust in the Lord, even through the midst of your disappointment, even through the midst of a situation that's not working out, and you understand that this will have a way, that Lord will provide you a way to turn around and make this situation work, you will spend less time being disappointed and always find success out of any situation, right? And I promise you, I can guarantee you that listen, man, I get goosebumps just thinking about it because God has done that for me so many times, right? We always try to think and operate in a form of getting things to be exact, but we're not wired that way. We're not God. So we place the situations, we place these things that we want to turn around and get done in the hands of God. We'll find that God has a very unique way, very amazing way of making things work in ways that we would have never thought of. And it leads to more satisfaction than we could ever have turned around and provided for itself, or trying to chase down and find fulfillment out of something else with, or utilizing some kind of crazy expectation to try and make us be able to reach there. No, man. Put your faith in God. All right. Understand that no matter what, your outcome of success is not dictated by how exact you get it, but by the initial way in which you press forward, and adapt and change and overcome situations, right? So again, going back to it, disappointment again is supposed to be positive, man. If we don't see the wrong way of how it's supposed to be done, then how will we know what the right way looks like, right? So just want to throw that in there for you. But as always, this has been TTP, man. That is all I got for you. All right. We'll be back again with another trigger for you. Will it be emotional? Will it be physical? Will I go left field and pull something else? Anyway, so, I love you guys. Again, avoid the disappointment, set realistic expectations, and we'll see you again in another episode of TTP, all right? Peace, y'all.